The Americans shattered Japanese pride. Ep. 4. March 15, 1943. Rabaul, New Britain. Captain Minoru Yamada of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service lifted the intelligence report and squinted at the photograph. He was 42, lean as bamboo, with 3 years of continuous combat carved into the lines around his eyes. "Look at this," Yamada said, dropping the report onto the wooden table with deliberate contempt. "The Americans believe they can mass-produce fighters like automobiles." Lieutenant Commander Takeo Ishii nodded, his jaw tight with certainty. "They treat warfare like factory work, no warrior spirit, no understanding that quality defeats quantity." Commander Jiro Nakamura, Chief Intelligence Officer for the 11th Air Fleet, leaned forward with caution in his voice. "Captain, the production numbers in these reports are concerning." If even half accurate, but Yamada waved him off with a sharp gesture. "Even if true, machinery without skill is worthless. At the Coral Sea, we sank their carrier with inferior numbers. Off Guadalcanal, our pilots achieved 4-to-1 ratios. Over the Solomons last week, 8 of their fighters against 3 Zeros, we destroyed 5, lost none." He stood, hands clasped behind his back. "Their pilots trained for 200 hours face hours with 2,000. Simple mathematics." Commander Nakamura persisted. "But Captain, these factories they're building will produce flying coffins," Yamada interrupted. "Aluminum coffins assembled by women and old men. We have warriors." The mathematics were undeniable. Japanese pilot superiority had been proven in every engagement. At Pearl Harbor, 29 aircraft lost versus 188 destroyed. At Darwin, 8 aircraft lost versus 23 destroyed plus port facilities. At Ceylon, 19 aircraft lost versus 40 destroyed plus 2 cruisers sunk. The Zero's combat record showed kill ratios that defied Western military theory. What Yamada didn't know, what none of them could have known as they studied intelligence reports in that humid operations bunker, was that American production would destroy 22,000 Japanese aircraft within 30 months. The numbers would become catastrophic. 19,000 American aircraft produced monthly versus 1,500 Japanese. 300,000 trained American pilots versus 18,000 Japanese. The confident analysis in that Rabaul bunker would become history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in 58,000 Japanese aircrew dead. The foundation of certainty at Wake Island, 13 American defenders faced 36 Japanese attackers. Japanese losses, 7 aircraft. American losses, all 13 plus the island. At Clark Field in the Philippines, the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service destroyed 103 American aircraft on December 8, 1941, half the Far East Air Force, while losing 7 planes. Kill ratio, 14-1. At Java Sea, Japanese naval aviation sank 5 Allied warships without losing a single aircraft to air combat. These weren't battles. These were demonstrations of absolute technical and tactical superiority. The Mitsubishi A6M0 possessed specifications that American intelligence initially dismissed as propaganda. Maximum speed, 331 miles per hour. Rate of climb, 3,100 feet per minute. Service ceiling, 33,000 feet. Combat radius, 1,200 miles with drop tank. Armament, 220 cannon, 2 7.7 machine guns. Weight, 5,313 pounds empty. Most importantly, turn radius at 200 miles per hour inferior to no contemporary fighter in existence. Recent American failures confirmed the assessment. The Buffalo fighter deployed at Midway in Singapore achieved a kill ratio of 1, 5 against zeros, 5 Buffaloes lost for every 0 destroyed. The P-39 Airacobra, rushed to the Pacific, suffered similar decimation. The P-40 Warhawk managed slightly better but remained thoroughly outclassed in any engagement involving turning combat. American pilots received a simple instruction: never dogfight a 0. Captain Yamada's combat record justified his confidence. He had flown at Pearl Harbor, destroying 2 aircraft on the ground and damaging a 3rd. Over the Coral Sea, he personally shot down 1 American fighter. Off Guadalcanal, he achieved 2 confirmed kills in a single engagement lasting 7 minutes. His Squadron 18 aircraft at full strength had accumulated 127 confirmed kills against 14 losses since December 1941. Kill ratio, 9-1. These were facts documented in official records, verified by multiple witnesses. Commander Nakamura presented his concerns methodically during a March 20th briefing. American production capacity increased 17% in January, he reported, consulting notes compiled from interrogations and captured documents. Their pilot training facilities expanded by 12 new schools. Intelligence suggests they're developing improved aircraft. He paused. Captain, if they can produce sufficient quantity while improving quality, Yamada cut him off. Intelligence suggested the Americans couldn't recover from Pearl Harbor within 6 months. We see their carriers operating. Intelligence suggested they couldn't hold Guadalcanal. They held it. Intelligence now suggests they'll overwhelm us with production. He shook his head. What intelligence fails to calculate is warrior spirit versus factory mentality. Lieutenant Ishii, 28 years old with 430 combat hours and 6 confirmed kills, had experienced American resistance firsthand. I engaged 4 Wildcats over Guadalcanal last month, he recounted. They flew with discipline, maintained formation, used tactics emphasizing their aircraft's strengths. They were professional, he paused. But when I forced turning combat, they broke. The Zero's superiority in that envelope remains absolute. 1 victory, 3 damaged, 0 losses. The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Willow Run, Michigan, April 1943. Henry Ford II walked through the factory at 6:00 a.m., watching the overnight shift complete another B-24 Liberator bomber. The single facility, 1 mile long, 1/4 mile wide, produced 1 B-24 every 63 minutes. Every hour, another 4-engine heavy bomber rolled off the line complete with armament, instruments, and fuel tanks. In January 1942, America produced 1,200 military aircraft total. By January 1943, production reached 5,500 monthly. By April 1943, Willow Run alone was producing 432 B-24s monthly, more 4-engine bombers than the entire Japanese aircraft industry produced aircraft of all types. This single facility was producing more heavy bombers than Japan's combined industrial capacity could manufacture fighters, bombers, and reconnaissance aircraft combined. Sarah Mitchell, previously a schoolteacher from Ypsilanti, now operated riveting equipment producing 840 rivets per 8-hour shift. She personally installed more rivets in 1 day than the average Japanese aircraft factory used in 3 complete fighters. Her station, one of 1,600 identical positions in the Willow Run plant, represented a production capacity that exceeded anything the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service imagined possible. She earned $42 weekly more than a Japanese factory manager's monthly salary. James Washington, from Detroit's East Side, operated hydraulic presses that stamped B-24 wing components at a rate of 1 complete assembly every 17 minutes. His single station's daily output, 12 wing assemblies, exceeded the entire daily production of Mitsubishi's Nagoya plant, which manufactured 6 complete A6M0s daily when operating at maximum efficiency. Washington's production line rejected components for defects that Japanese factories would accept as meeting specifications. The rejected aluminum from his station in 1 day exceeded Japanese monthly aluminum allocation for an entire squadron. Charles Wilson, $1-a-year man from General Motors, managed logistics coordination across 17 supplier factories feeding Willow Run. His organizational chart tracked 1,547 companies producing 100,000 individual components. One supplier, a former refrigerator manufacturer in Indiana, produced more aircraft instruments monthly than Japanese total production. Another, converting from automobile parts, manufactured more landing gear assemblies weekly than Japan produced in a month. Americans discarded 4,200 pounds of aluminum scrap daily at Willow Run. Japan allocated 3,800 pounds monthly to an entire air wing. The mathematical disparity defied comprehension. Waste exceeded allocation. The waste from single-day production exceeded Japan's emergency reserve. Workers threw away defective rivets that Japanese engineers carefully straightened and reused. Quality control rejected wing panels for microscopic stress cracks invisible to standard inspection. Japanese factories would install such panels without hesitation. Americans scrapped them. Workers threw away sandwiches containing meat that Japanese military personnel received as special rations. The cafeteria discarded more beef daily than the entire Japanese garrison at Rabaul, 22,000 men, received in a week. Coffee grounds thrown away each morning exceeded the coffee allocated to the combined fleet for a month. The cafeteria discarded more food daily than Rabaul's military mess halls served to 8,000 aircrew and support personnel. Breakfast alone, eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice, coffee contained more calories than the average Japanese pilot's full daily ration. Workers left partial meals on plates. Japanese soldiers carefully scraped bowls clean. The wasted aluminum from testing protocols in April exceeded the total aluminum allocated to Japanese aircraft production for March. Testing consumed 180,000 pounds of aluminum. Monthly destruction of components to verify strength exceeded Japan's production of actual aircraft components. Engineers deliberately broke parts to find failure points. Japanese engineers reused broken parts when possible. The rejected ammunition from quality testing at Lake Denmark Arsenal exceeded the ammunition allocated to the entire Japanese 11th Air Fleet for defensive operations. American factories tested every 1,000th round by firing it. The tested ammunition alone, destroyed to verify quality, exceeded Japanese combat allocation. Commander Nakamura received these statistics through intelligence analysis in May 1943. He compiled a report documenting American production capacity and presented it to Captain Yamada. A single American factory produces more combat aircraft monthly than our entire industrial base, he reported quietly. Not similar aircraft, more aircraft of superior quality. Yamada read the report. He did not believe it. June 7, 1943, over New Georgia, 13:47 hours. Lieutenant Takeo Ishii was conducting routine combat air patrol when radar detected inbound contacts. 6 Zeros under his command climbed to intercept 12 contacts reported at 15,000 feet, closing at 280 miles per hour. At 13:51 hours, Ishii identified the aircraft visually. F-6F Hellcats, a new American fighter he'd been briefed about but never encountered. At 13:52 hours, Ishii initiated engagement, diving from 18,000 feet with sun advantage and altitude superiority textbook Zero tactics that had destroyed hundreds of American aircraft. At 1,352:40, he achieved firing position on the trailing Hellcat. At 1,352:47, his 20 cannon rounds struck the American fighter's wing and fuselage. At 1,352:51, the Hellcat rolled right dove and accelerated away from him. Elapsed time from engagement to escape, 11 seconds. At 13:53 hours, 2 Hellcats reversed on his wingman. At 1,353:18, his wingman's Zero exploded. Kill time, 18 seconds. At 1,353:30, Ishii attempted to force turning combat, his decisive advantage in every previous engagement. The Hellcat declined, dove away, and at 1,353:55 was out of range. At 1,354:20, another Zero exploded under Hellcat guns. Kill time, 23 seconds. At 13:55 hours, Ishii ordered withdrawal. At 1,355:40, a third Zero was destroyed during the retreat. Kill time, 16 seconds. At 13:56 hours, the Hellcats disengaged, not pursuing. Total engagement duration, 4 minutes 0 seconds. Japanese losses, 3 Zeros, 3 pilots. American losses, 0. Kill ratio, 3-0. The ammunition expended in this 4-minute engagement exceeded the monthly ammunition allocation for the entire air group stationed at Rabaul 96 aircraft. Ishii returned to base at 14:18 hours. He reported to Captain Yamada at 14:30 hours. "The new American fighter is faster," he said carefully. "More heavily armed." "They declined turning combat completely." He paused. "Captain, they flew with absolute discipline. They used tactics that negated our advantages." Yamada reviewed the report. 3 losses is unfortunate, he acknowledged. But they were 12 aircraft against 6. The mathematics favor them in such circumstances. He dismissed the tactical implications. Numerical advantage explains the result. But Commander Nakamura, reading the same report, noted different mathematics. 3 victories in 4 minutes suggested kill times under 30 seconds. American pilots were achieving what Japanese pilots achieved only against completely inferior aircraft flown by undertrained adversaries. The Hellcat wasn't just competitive. In this engagement, it had been superior. Denial and recognition intelligence dismissed the initial reports as exaggeration born from combat stress. Captain Yamada reviewed 6 engagement reports from June and early July, each describing similar results. American fighters declined turning combat, used speed and altitude, achieved kills through disciplined tactics emphasizing their aircraft's strengths. He noted that American losses were minimal, but attributed this to numerical superiority. "They're learning," he concluded. But learning tactics cannot overcome fundamental performance gaps. The mathematics remained comfortable. Zeros cost $25,000 each. Hellcats reportedly cost $35,000. Economics still favored Japan. Commander Nakamura reported to Naval Headquarters on July 12th. "American fighter production now reaches 2,400 aircraft monthly. Our production is 425 monthly." The new F-6F Hellcat possesses superior speed, superior climb rate, superior firepower, and armor protection our aircraft lack entirely. American pilots are achieving kill ratios that suggest equality or superiority. He included production comparisons. Grumman's Long Island facility alone produces 200 Hellcats monthly. This exceeds total Japanese fighter production from Mitsubishi, Nakajima, and Kawasaki combined. American production in July 1943, 7,300 military aircraft. Japanese production in July 1943, 1,530 military aircraft. A single American factory, Willow Run, exceeded Japan's total bomber production. A single American facility, Grumman Bethpage, produced more fighters than Japan's 3 primary manufacturers combined. American carrier production, 4 fleet carriers building simultaneously. Japanese carrier production, 2 fleet carriers building with construction delays due to material shortages. The mathematics had reversed. They tried using altitude advantage. The Americans climbed faster. They attempted diving attacks. The Americans dove as fast or faster. They tried to force separation and reform. The Americans stayed with them. They attempted to use range advantage, forcing Americans to burn fuel. American drop tanks extended range beyond zero capabilities. Every traditional zero advantage was neutralized or reversed. Another engagement developed over Bougainville on July 19th. 18 Zeros intercepted 8 Hellcats and 4 Corsairs, another new American fighter. At 14:20 hours, the Japanese attack began. At 14:23 hours, the first Zero exploded. Kill time, 12 seconds. At 14:25 hours, 2 more Zeros were destroyed. Kill times, 18 and 21 seconds. At 14:27 hours, the Japanese commander ordered withdrawal. At 14:29 hours, 2 Zeros were shot down during retreat. Kill times, 14 and 19 seconds. At 14:32 hours, 1 more Zero was destroyed. Kill time, 22 seconds. Total engagement, 12 minutes. Japanese losses, 6 aircraft, 6 pilots. American losses, 1 Corsair damaged, pilot recovered. Kill ratio, 6:0:3. The fuel consumed by the American fighters in this engagement exceeded the weekly fuel allocation for the entire Rabaul air group. Commander Nakamura presented final proof to command staff on July 25th. "We have lost 78 aircraft in the last 6 weeks, he reported. American losses, 11, kill ratio, 7-1 in their favor. He placed production statistics before them. "They are producing 6 times our output. They are achieving kill ratios 7-1 in their favor. The mathematics are catastrophic." He paused. "We cannot sustain operations under these conditions." Captain Yamada still refused to believe. "Temporary disadvantage," he insisted. "Our pilots remain superior. These new aircraft will prove vulnerable once we develop countertactics." But his voice carried less certainty. He had personally encountered a Hellcat over Russell Islands on July 22nd. He had fired 60-20 rounds and achieved 4 hits. The Hellcat had absorbed the damage, dove away at speed he couldn't match, and disappeared. He had not included this in his report. Lieutenant Ishii observed the escalation with growing alarm. In May, he had flown 6 combat missions and achieved 2 victories. In June, 8 missions, 0 victories, lost 1 wingman. In July, 9 missions, 0 victories, lost 2 wingmen, had been forced to withdraw under fire 3 times. His Zero had bullet holes in the left wing and tail. American .50 caliber rounds had punched through aluminum like paper. "They're not just equal," he told Nakamura privately. "In speed, in firepower, in protection, they're superior, and there are more of them every day." The arsenal of democracy at Republic Aviation's Farmingdale plant, P-47 Thunderbolt production achieved mechanical precision. Every 90 minutes, another P-47 rolled complete from final assembly. The facility operated 3 shifts, 24 hours daily, producing 16 P-47s every 24 hours. This single facility produced more fighters than Japan's entire industry-produced aircraft of all types. Americans discarded defective engine components that represented more refined metal than Japanese monthly allocation for engine production. Testing protocols destroyed engines deliberately run until failure to establish reliability limits. The destroyed engines in testing exceeded the engines Japan installed in operational aircraft. Quality control rejected propellers for microscopic imbalances. Japanese factories installed propellers that American inspectors would condemn as dangerously defective. Workers threw away machine oil that Japanese maintenance crews filtered and reused until it became thick as tar. Hydraulic fluid was changed on schedules that seemed wasteful extravagance to Japanese standards. Americans replaced parts on time-based schedules. Japanese crews replaced parts when they failed. The preventive maintenance protocols consumed more parts monthly than Japanese repair depots received annually. Cafeteria waste included meat, eggs, dairy, and vegetables in quantities that exceeded military rations for an entire Japanese air division. Workers complained about food quality despite consuming meals that Japanese officers received only on special occasions. Coffee was unlimited. Japanese pilots received tea rations carefully measured by the gram. The caloric intake of American factory workers exceeded the rations of Japanese combat pilots. Aluminum scrap from single-day production at one facility, 4,800 pounds, exceeded the aluminum allocated to Mitsubishi's Nagoya plant for an entire week of zero production. The scrap was valuable enough to recycle, but was simply discarded because recycling logistics cost more than raw aluminum. Japanese factories melted down crashed aircraft to recover aluminum. American factories threw away more aluminum than Japanese forces could recover from crashes. Discarded ammunition from quality control testing exceeded combat allocation for the entire Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service monthly. American ammunition manufacturers tested every 100th round by firing it. Lake Denmark Arsenal alone destroyed more ammunition monthly in testing than Japan produced for combat use. The tested ammunition, destroyed to verify reliability, exceeded Japanese pilots' actual combat expenditure. Every paragraph documented the same crushing reality. American excess capacity exceeded Japanese maximum effort. At Ford's Willow Run plant, scrap metal from 1 week exceeded the metal allocated to Japanese aircraft production for a month. At Grumman's Bethpage facility, rejected components exceeded Japan's production of acceptable components. At Pratt & Whitney's East Hartford engine plant, destroyed test engines exceeded Japan's production of operational engines. Commander Nakamura compiled these statistics into a report he knew would be ignored. Single American factories exceed our national industrial capacity, he wrote. Their waste exceeds our production. Their testing protocols destroy more material monthly than we produce for actual use. We are not competing with American industry. We are being buried by it. He submitted the report on August 3rd. It was filed without comment. August 17, 1943, over Vella Lavella. 48 Japanese aircraft, 24 Zeros and 24 Val dive bombers faced 32 American fighters, 16 Hellcats and 16 Corsairs. The engagement lasted 37 minutes. This would become known among Japanese aircrew as the Annihilation. At 15:15 hours, the engagement began. Japanese bombers attempted to reach American shipping while Zeros provided cover. At 15:17 hours, 4 Hellcats penetrated the Zero screen. At 15:18 hours, 3 Vals were destroyed. Kill times 15:18 and 21 seconds. At 15:20 hours, 6 more Vals were destroyed. Kill times 12, 14, 17, 19, 22, and 24 seconds. At 15:23 hours, the Val formation broke. All remaining bombers jettisoned bombs and dove for cloud cover. At 15:25 hours, Corsairs engaged the Zero escorts. At 15:27 hours, 5 Zeros were destroyed. Kill times 11, 14, 16, 19, and 23 seconds. At 15:30 hours, Hellcats rejoined the engagement after destroying the Val bombers. Combined American fighters now numbered 32 against 19 surviving Zeros. At 15:33 hours, 7 more Zeros were destroyed. Kill times 9, 13, 15, 18, 18, 21, and 24 seconds. At 15:36 hours, the Japanese commander, Captain Yamada, ordered full withdrawal. At 15:38 hours, 3 Zeros were shot down during retreat. Kill times 10, 14, and 16 seconds. At 15:41 hours, 2 more zeros were destroyed. Kill times 12 and 17 seconds. At 15:44 hours, 1 final 0 was destroyed. Kill time 15 seconds. At 15:52 hours, the engagement ended. Enemy aircraft destroyed. 16 zeros, 11 vowels. Total, 27 aircraft, 27 pilots. American losses, 1 Hellcat damaged, pilot recovered. 1 Corsair damaged, pilot recovered. Kill ratio, 27-0. The ammunition expended in this 37-minute engagement exceeded the monthly ammunition allocation for the entire Japanese Southeast Area Fleet, 214 operational aircraft. The fuel consumed in this engagement exceeded the weekly fuel allocation for all air operations from Rabaul. American fighters had operated at full combat power for 37 minutes. Japanese protocols rationed fuel so tightly that pilots often cruised at reduced power to extend range. The Americans flew without fuel constraints. At 15:44 hours, Captain Minoru Yamada's Zero was engaged by 2 Hellcats while attempting to cover retreating bombers. At 1544, 11.50 caliber rounds struck his aircraft's engine and cockpit. At 1544, 19, his Zero caught fire. At 1544, 23, the aircraft entered an uncontrolled spin. At 1544, 31, it struck the ocean surface. Elapsed time from engagement to death, 31 seconds. He had flown 187 combat missions. He had achieved 14 confirmed victories. He died in less time than his shortest kill. Lieutenant Ishii witnessed Yamada's death from 4,000 feet while fleeing at maximum speed with a damaged Zero. He had fired all his ammunition without achieving a single hit. 2 Hellcats had pursued him for 7 minutes, firing periodically but not pursuing aggressively when he managed to reach cloud cover. He landed at Buin Airfield at 16:09 hours. His Zero had 47 bullet holes. That evening he told Commander Nakamura, "This wasn't combat, this was systematic annihilation." Of 48 aircraft launched, 21 returned, 27 aircraft destroyed, 27 trained aircrew dead. The Americans had achieved better than 1 kill per aircraft committed. They had done so while suffering effectively 0 losses. Most devastatingly, they had ammunition remaining when they disengaged. They had fuel remaining. They hadn't fought to exhaustion. They had simply killed until nothing remained worth killing, then departed. October 1945. Allied Occupation Headquarters, Tokyo. Commander Jiro Nakamura sat in a plain chair facing American intelligence officers. His uniform, once immaculate, showed careful repair and fading. He had survived the war. Captain Yamada had not. 58,000 Japanese aircrew had not. "We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories," Nakamura said quietly. In 1943, a single American factory, Willow Run, produced 432 heavy bombers monthly. Our entire industry produced 380 aircraft of all types monthly. This single American facility exceeded our national production capacity. He paused. By 1944, American production reached 9,000 aircraft monthly. Our production reached 1,400 monthly. We could not replace losses. They could lose 3 for every one of ours and still expand their operational strength. Lieutenant Takeo Ishii, now a lieutenant commander having survived the war through luck and caution, provided his testimony separately. "I saw Captain Yamada destroyed in 31 seconds by aircraft that absorbed damage which would destroy a Zero, flown by pilots with training equal to ours, supported by logistics we couldn't imagine. The Americans didn't just outproduce us. They revolutionized production itself. They built factories that exceeded our entire industrial capacity. They trained pilots in months who flew aircraft superior to ours. The mathematics became impossible." Additional testimonies from surviving aircrew documented the progression from confidence to catastrophe. "We brought swords to a gunfight, then discovered they brought artillery. Their excess capacity exceeded our maximum effort. They could afford to lose aircraft testing quality. We couldn't afford to lose aircraft in combat. They could lose 1,000 aircraft and replace them in 4 days. We could lose 100 and require a month to replace them. The mathematics were brutal. They produced 7 aircraft for every one of ours. They trained 4 pilots for every one of ours. They could sustain kill ratios of 2 to 1 in their favor and still overwhelm us through attrition. By 1944, we sent pilots with 100 hours training against American pilots with 400 hours. We sent aircraft cobbled from salvaged parts against factory-fresh American fighters. We sent hungry, exhausted men against well-fed, well-rested crews. We had already lost. We simply hadn't stopped dying yet. Commander Nakamura provided comprehensive production statistics during his interrogation. American production, 1943, 85,898 aircraft total. Japanese production, 1943, 16,693 aircraft. Single American factory, Willow Run monthly production, 432 B-24s. Entire Japanese bomber production monthly, 280 aircraft of all bomber types. American fighter production, 1944, 38,873 aircraft. Japanese fighter production, 1944, 13,811 aircraft. Single American manufacturer, Republic Aviation, produced 12,602 P-47s in 1944. This exceeded total Japanese fighter production from all manufacturers. Grumman produced 12,275 Hellcats in 1943-1944. Mitsubishi produced 10,449 Zeros in the same period. One American company producing one fighter type exceeded Japan's primary manufacturer producing its most important fighter. American production included 19 other fighter types simultaneously. American pilot training capacity by 1944, 100,000 pilots annually. Japanese pilot training capacity, 15,000 pilots annually, reduced to 8,000 by fuel shortages. American training programs averaged 320 flight hours before combat assignment. Japanese training programs by 1944 averaged 90 flight hours due to fuel rationing. We knew these numbers by mid-1943, Nakamura concluded. I reported them to command. They were dismissed as impossible, then as exaggeration, then as temporary. By the time command accepted the reality, we had lost 28,000 aircrew and the war was already decided. The mathematics had become catastrophic, and we had no solution except to continue dying. The immutable arithmetic, the F-6F Hellcat, proved that democratic industrial systems could outproduce authoritarian command economies while simultaneously improving quality. Free workers outproduced slaves and conscripts. Democratic cooperation exceeded totalitarian coordination. Industrial abundance buried ideological superiority under 100,000 tons of aircraft aluminum. The Zero, once symbol of Japanese technical supremacy and warrior spirit, became a flying coffin when opposed by aircraft produced in factories where workers earned middle-class wages and ate meat daily. The lesson wasn't about individual courage. Japanese pilots flew with bravery equal to any in history. The lesson wasn't about tactical skill. Japanese tactics were innovative and aggressive. The lesson was about mathematics. 85,898 American aircraft produced in 1943 versus 16,693 Japanese aircraft. No amount of courage or skill could overcome 5-to-1 production disadvantage. No warrior spirit could deflect .50 caliber rounds fired from aircraft with armor protection. No tactical genius could compensate for fuel rationing that cut training hours by 70%. March 15, 1943. Captain Yamada had laughed at American production capacity. He had dismissed intelligence reports as propaganda. He had insisted that warrior spirit and superior aircraft would prevail. August 17, 1943. Captain Yamada died in 31 seconds, shot down by an aircraft produced in a factory that exceeded his nation's entire industrial capacity, flown by a pilot trained in facilities that graduated more aircrew monthly than Japan trained annually, firing ammunition produced in quantities that exceeded Japanese annual production. His mockery became history's most quantifiable miscalculation, measured in 58,000 Japanese aircrew killed, 44,000 Japanese aircraft destroyed, and absolute defeat. March 15, 1943, Japanese commanders studied maps and planned operations with confidence born from 18 months of victory. October 1945, survivors testified in occupied territory about the systematic annihilation of Japanese air power. Between those dates lay the mathematics of democratic industrial warfare: production, training, logistics, and abundance versus rationing, improvisation, desperation, and inevitable defeat. The final lesson remains unchanged across 80 years. Dismissing democratic nations as weak because they prefer peace or underestimating free people's productive capacity when sufficiently motivated invites catastrophic miscalculation. The mathematics were irrefutable in 1943. They remain irrefutable today. Industrial capacity, when mobilized by free societies choosing to fight, creates advantages that courage alone cannot overcome. The Americans didn't shatter Japanese pride through superior warrior spirit. They buried it under 100,000 aircraft produced in factories whose waste exceeded Japanese production, flown by pilots whose training exceeded Japanese capability, supported by logistics that treated as disposable what Japan rationed by the gram. The mathematics were always going to be decisive. They were simply waiting for recognition.